All right, so welcome to another Champions Journey interview in the Scrap the 9 to 5 Champions Guild, where the purpose of these videos is to really illustrate how various people who have gone down their own paths in business and entrepreneurship to ultimately replace their income, create choice, freedom, and control in their lives. Now, today I'm joined by a very special guest, Violet Stupple, who is here to talk to us about her e-commerce business, Cosmic Crystals, and really give us a little bit of an insight into what she's achieved, where she's come from, why she's done it, and how that has impacted and changed her life. So, Violet, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Good to speak to you. You're welcome. So I just want to do a little bit of an overview of, let's say, some of your headline achievements to give people a bit of an idea of where you've come from. If I get any of this wrong, please stop me, interrupt me, and let me know. But I'm just going to reel these off to give people a bit of a picture, because if I'm correct, you have got to the point now in your e-commerce business, Cosmic Crystals, where you are doing £120,000 a month in revenue. And in the last 2 years, so just under 2 years, you went from zero, and then in month one, so first month of actually focusing on your business, you got to 10K per month in revenue with paid advertising. And as I say, that was less than 2 years ago, and you're now at 120K per month in revenue. Have I got that right?
That's correct, yeah.
It's amazing, absolutely mind-blowing. But my favorite thing that you told me before we started about your achievements so far was more on the mental health and life enjoyment and happiness side of things, because you explained how you went from corporate career, stressed, anxiety, panic attacks, and now you're working just 3 half days per week. So much more enjoyment and life happiness. And I'm really, really keen, Violet, to hear about your journey and how you actually did that. So if you could start by telling us a little bit about your background and where you came from, and then we'll go into how you started the journey to get to where you are now.
Yes, so previously, before Cosmic Crystals, I was working in advertising, and it's like an amazing industry to be in. Like, I was working in some of the top brands in the world in London. It was great for a while, until as the years went on, my energy just started being like depleted by the process, and it was getting more and more fast paced, more and more pressure. And I found as you go up the ladder, it just kind of compounds on you. And I got to the point where I was literally having panic attacks in my lunch break. I'd be like fretting on the weekend about going back into work. I'd have like deep anxiety just all the time. And I guess it was to do with my job, but it was like at that point a very generalized anxiety, the point where I then developed like quite bad acne from just like stress and a bad diet, and just totally overwhelmed basically. And I didn't know what to do, because at that stage I'd started earning like a good wage from being a freelancer, and then had this whole lifestyle I was supporting as well with it, like living in London and all the expenses that come with that. So I was in a bit of a bind, because I knew I didn't enjoy my job anymore, but financially I couldn't understand at that point how the hell I was going to come out of it. So it's like you kind of get trapped in the system. That is what I felt like. And I was just a part of that process.
Yeah.
So the key $1 million question is, how did I get out of that bind? Well, the first part was, I mean, there's a longer form story to this, but I'll just tell you the abridged one, is that I decided, like, my passion outside of work was everything holistic. So I always loved like crystals and psychic and tarot and horoscopes and all that kind of stuff. So an opportunity come up where I was able to sell these crystal necklaces. And I thought I had this great idea that I wanted to show people the meaning. So I had this kind of niche thing that I wanted to do. And it was just something I loved. So I built this website in the background. Now, it just didn't earn any money. Like, it flopped, basically. I turned it on. I had this amazing idea, and I was like, this is going to be it. I'll be able to do this. Yeah. And it just was like, not good, because I didn't know what I was doing at that stage.
Yeah.
So I kind of dropped it, but I kind of kept it going in the background. So even at these, in my job, in the lunch breaks or like after work, I'd be tinkering on the website, like making improvements, a couple sales here and there, but not really, because just didn't have the skills at that point. But I knew I had still had something good, but yeah, it just wasn't proven. Then I did a fair. I just thought, do you know what? One Christmas, just going to do a fair, see how it goes. When I took the product and my crystals and all their meanings to this fair, I had a queue of people and it pretty much like sold out within a day. So then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, I haven't nailed the online thing yet because I don't know how it works, but I've proved that people like what I'm providing. And actually, I think this is like a really good technique for people. If you've got something, don't just dismiss it because it hasn't initially worked on your website, because you might not yet have the skills to drive the amount of traffic that you require. But if you're able to do like a small acid test on it, so like doing a fair or, you know, doing an event, conferences, whatever it is, just to prove that the product works, it's like a real morale booster, and it just allows you to know that there's a market there. So I did that, did the fair. Then I thought, right, it works. I'm just gonna quit my job because I can't stand it, and I'll just do fairs. Like, I've showed that this can work. Every other weekend, like, I'll do a fair, it will cover my rent and stuff. That will be enough. But because I'm happy now to trade my happiness for a job. So yeah, at that point in my life, my mental health had to take precedent. I was like, I've had enough of like panic attacks. I've had enough of feeling like this. There has to be more to life than just going to work for a paycheck. Like, that can't be it. So I did that, and I took the leap of faith, not really knowing at that point, like, if it was 100% going to work. But because I'd made that commitment by quitting the job, it's like I had to make it work. So I then tapped in, like, I do meditation and all this kind of thing. And as I'd calmed down, as I'd stepped away from the stress of my job, it left like a bit of breathing room for my mind, to be honest. And as I was able to settle, a bit like when you go on a walk and you come up with an idea, or when your brain is in like a slightly different brainwave, you just get more insight. So very quickly I was doing meditations, and I got this insight of exactly what I needed to do, which sounds a bit crazy now, but this is the truth, and how I could basically run Facebook ads, and the strategy I needed, and like the way in which to make the plan and work back and all this kind of stuff. And then on the Monday, I had a call from Facebook. They randomly called me, wanted to speak to me. And then, within a month, I hit 10K. And then that was it. So literally from quitting the job to like believing in something and just having faith almost that it was going to work out. For me, luckily, I mean, not for everyone, this is obviously might not happen for everyone, but I believe if you've got an intuition, if you have faith in what you're doing, if you've proved in somehow that it's going to work, it most likely will. And that
I think you've absolutely hit on something that is so important there, which is belief in yourself. Like, however you do it, whether it's faith in intuition, in something bigger, whether it's just, as you say, proving the model works so that you can convince yourself that I know that this will work and therefore have the confidence to go for it. That is absolutely crucial in anything. Now, there's two things that I want to pick up on that you said that I think are going to be gold dust to dig into. So number one is this whole idea of when you're trapped in a situation like a work situation, and that feeling of not knowing how to get out. I used to call it the golden handcuffs when I was in software sales. And what that means is that your income reaches a point where you can no longer afford to quit your job because your expenses are, they're increasing to meet it. So you end up trapped. And then the second thing you picked up on, or that you mentioned, was about your the sort of product idea that you came up with. And I wanted to understand a little bit more about how you took an idea, which I think a lot of people will have, and how you then started to actually create it in the real world. So let's talk about the trapped thing first. As soon as you knew you were trapped, what was like the thought process? How did you start to move from being trapped into creating that space that you talked about?
So at first, like I'd gone from total entrapment, which was a full-time job, and then I'd started to realize for me that was unsustainable, which is when I went to freelance. So that for me was a bit of a bridge. So it was during my freelance stage that I had like gaps of time. So it was in those like couple of weeks here and a couple of weeks there between jobs, I was able to like start thinking about new ideas. But yeah, I would say it's quite difficult when you're in a full-time role to have that mental space. So if anyone is able to make that initial bridged gap of going from a full-time job to maybe like part-time or freelance, that creates that breathing space I needed anyway. So then you're not so committed to be like, I'm going to have my full-time job and that's it. I'm just going to quit on Monday morning and I'm going to do this. Because for me, that would have created more anxiety. Like I couldn't have lived knowing that I'd completely given up something for something that's not tested at all if I've got a mortgage to pay like I did and I've got all these responsibilities. So that was like the bridge gap for me. And just knowing that I had, like I said, with the fair, it was validated. Like I knew it was going to bring in something. So it de-risked the process. Fair enough to those people that do take that massively, because I know it works out for some, but my profile just needed, like my personality profile couldn't quite handle that.
No, I completely agree, because I did do the crazy quit job, and you're right, the level of anxiety and stress that you put yourself in is huge. The benefit is that you do give yourself a do or die situation, which kind of means that you have to do it, but it's definitely not the wisest way to do it at all. And I think what you said there about creating a bridge in your situation, whether it's part-time or just starting to earn a little bit of income through like a side hustle, freelancing, something like that, I think that's a really, really good advice. Now, what about the products? When you started creating the crystal jewelry, was it actually yourself that you were creating them, or were you sourcing them from other manufacturers?
So I've always had it in the back of my mind that whatever I did, it had to be scalable. So whenever, and I think this is a good way of going into something, even if it starts off small. Now, never in my wildest dreams would I've imagined that I'd have even got to where I am at the minute at all. Like, it just wasn't even comprehensible in my mind. It was just, like I said, my only thing was I just want to do something that I enjoy that's going to cover my mortgage. All the rest of this has just followed. I never set out with any intention to earn huge amounts of money, but I did set out with the intention of like, okay, whatever I do, I need to make sure there's enough of it. So that there'll be enough product that I can get more and more should I need to. And another big part that I'd realized is that I didn't want to exchange my time for money. So I didn't want to be slaving away creating things, because again, that for me was another bind that I'd get myself in. So I'd just be out of the frying pan into the fire. So everything I kept thinking was, okay, how can I outsource this? How can I make sure that it's not me touching anything and create an automated process, which I think is a really, as things grow, you realize that that's like super important. So yeah, I found like easy Google searches for most things these days. Like you can white label products, you can like put your logos on things. But yeah, just literally Google searches, just spent like days on Google finding products, checking where the suppliers was, what was the quantities of stock they had. Like in the beginning, there was some teething issues where I picked suppliers that couldn't deliver. And I quickly found that like they'd be running out of stock or there'd be these like issues. So you realize you have to really pick the people that you're going to be working with and know that they're robust enough to go like grow with you basically. So yeah, that is definitely something to think from the beginning.
It sounds like you've always had a real willingness to fail forwards, right? You go and do stuff, you try it, you figure it out. Sometimes things go wrong and don't work out, but then as a result of that, you figure out what does work and you can pivot and do something different. Like, have you always had that kind of mindset, or do you think it's something that you've learned, this ability to fail forwards and just try stuff?
I'd say my whole career pre this, like the project management stuff, was the ultimate of winging it. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't have any certifications in that. Like, everything that I did, I was always learning on the job. So I'd always say, someone was like, oh, can you do this? I'd just say yes first, and then figure out after in a crazy panic, like me on Google, figuring out how to do it after. I think because I was in so many situations, like obviously the freelance world, you're thrown into like mental scenarios of firefighting problems, and you just have to keep coming up with solutions. So yeah, maybe that has actually helped. Finding solutions to problems you don't even know exist yet.
Yeah, winging it is something I love that, and I definitely relate to that. I'm 100% a winger. I'll just try things, give things a go, and just figure it out as I go. This whole, what you just said there about say yes first and then figure it out after, perfect. Absolutely love that. So let's say
everything is it's answerable. I mean, there's nothing really in life unless you're going to do, don't know, quantum physics or, most things you will figure out a way to do it. Nothing is that, like, I'd say what I do now, anyone can do. This isn't like difficult stuff. It's that I'd way more say it's just like the belief that you can do it is the main bit, or that you even want to go outside of like this regular 9 to 5 world. That is the major step. Once you've got that step done, then the actual practical tasks of this stuff are quite straightforward.
So I suppose like you say, the practical tasks of building your website, for example, drag and drop site. Was it Shopify that you used?
Yeah, so I use Shopify. I'd never used Shopify before. I just completely like self-taught myself, as I think anyone can. Prior to that, it was actually on Wix.com, which is another good site. But in terms of like, I had to change and transfer it because I found Shopify to be a more robust platform if you want lots of sales, basically, a lot of products. But yeah, there's loads. There's obviously, you've got WordPress, you've obviously got Squarespace. There's so many now, and they're all so intuitive.
Just drag and drop, isn't it?
You can have a website up quite easily.
You're cosmiccrystals.co.uk, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes, cool. So just to give people a little bit of an idea, when you first started this site, I'm guessing it didn't look anything as amazing as it does at the moment, but you had enough, like the minimum viable product strategy to actually get up and running. What was it like when you first launched this site?
So, like I said, I built it in Wix. It was pictures just taken off of my iPhone. I only had 12 products. Now I've got like nearly 100 on there. But all I wanted to test was the concept, which was, are people more interested in the meaning of what I'm selling and like how I can tell the story of each crystal and tell people how to use it and like make it much more informative. So it was, I believe you don't need the best looking website. Like, that really isn't the most important thing. And I think for a while in the time where it wasn't working, I blamed it on the aesthetic of the website. In my mind, I was like, the reason it's not working is probably because the photos aren't good enough, or, the user flow isn't right, or it's all that. It wasn't that at all. Like, I believe now it was the marketing side of it that was the issue. And you can almost have quite an ugly website, to be honest. If you're down on marketing and you know how to create the right funnels to get to your website, it will work. Obviously, the better it looks, the nicer photos you can get and all that kind of thing adds ups your percentage of conversions, but you don't need this high, glossy, amazing website to get sales. It's like, you just don't need that. There's a lot of people out there that will be willing to buy from you without it looking like that, basically.
I'd completely agree with that. If you get what it is that you're offering is actually valuable and you're getting it in front of the right people who want that, and it solves a particular pain or problem that they have, then exactly like you say, I believe that the aesthetics of a website is much less important. And again, I think it just goes back to this whole idea of being willing to just try stuff, just put something out there. Don't try and make everything perfect. if you know there's something you want to do and you're willing to get behind it, then, you know, just go for it. Just give it a go.
I have a saying actually, which is done is better than perfect. And I do this all the time. Like, even though I know something's not quite right, maybe even with me, I do loads of spelling mistakes and all stuff like this. But I'm just like, do you know what? Get it up there, just see what people think. Like, I'll
Yeah.
change it. Like, everything I've done, actually, it doesn't end. Like, I'm always making tweaks to the website. It's a continuous evolution. I think anyone who's doing anything in digital, there is no end, there's no finish line. And it's, you don't want to get too preoccupied with perfectionism, because yeah, it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be this constantly evolving thing. But the main thing is to get it out to other people and to kind of do that leap where you have to be brave to show your baby or this thing that you've created to the world. And that when you've done that bit, then yeah, the rest follows.
Exactly. It's that first hurdle, isn't it? As you say, being brave enough to go, you know what? Even if people judge me or it's not as good as it could be and whatever, I'm just going to put it out there, get it over and done with, and then work on it and move forward from there.
And the judgment thing is actually massive, because this is what held me back for ages. I thought, oh, well, you know, crystals is a bit niche, and are people going to think I'm this weirdo witch who's, you know, like, I don't know. I was so worried about what people were going to think. So I kept it like a total secret. And I'm sure a lot of things that people do, whether you put your face on it or you have to create videos or you do all this stuff, it is really nerve-wracking. It just is. But like with everything in life, when you go out of your comfort zone, you generally are rewarded for doing it, or you'll get some value, even though you don't get to 10K a month, like in my example, you will get something from it. Like, there'll be some value there.
Yeah, spot on. Completely agree. And off the back of that, then we've talked about the financial side. We've talked about the, you know, the money. We've talked about getting started. What about the transition you had from being stressed, anxious, panic attacks, overwork, and now you said that your mental health is so much better, you're so much happier, you work in, you know, 3 times half days per week. What's that been like for you to be able to get to the other side of that equation? How would you describe it?
Well, it's very liberating, and it definitely didn't just happen overnight. I think where we're so conditioned from a small age for like multiple beliefs, you know, we have to get up at 8 o'clock every morning. We have like the school day, then the bell rings and we leave. Like, it's like this turning up somewhere and working is just so drilled into our schema that it's very hard to break out of that. So I've like read so many self-help books, so many much like personal development stuff, to try and like question, is there another way? Like, is this what we're all meant to be here for? So that process in itself has been like a long time coming. And I'd say it took like several years actually to even start coming out of the, like, lowering the veil on that as a reality. It takes a while. But then obviously when you do get to the other side, you're just like, oh my God, why didn't I do this before? Thinking. And it becomes so obvious. But there's that saying, isn't there, like, hindsight's 2020 vision. And of course, it's so easy for me to look back and be like, oh yeah, I do 3 days a week now, that was a doddle. It definitely wasn't easy getting to that point. But I think when you value time as your greatest resource of all, which is what I think it is, then it changes your headspace about things. Because ultimately you can have all the money in the world, if you've got no time to spend it, what's the point? Like, if you're not seeing your friends and family, what's the point? Like, none of it makes sense anymore. So yeah, I think for me now, my main priority is like family, health, friends, like doing the things I want and doing something I'm passionate about and I believe has a purpose. And the money has just come as part of that. I now believe and like see with other people, the minute you focus your life more on like serving others, doing something you love, like, the money becomes a byproduct of that, rather than before in my job, I wasn't bothered about what I did. It didn't really have any purpose. All I cared about the money. And the irony is you don't get as much doing it that way.
Yeah, nailed it. Absolutely spot on. Now, any final closing words or advice, Violet, that you would give to someone who's watching this video, and let's say the veil has started to lower, like you said, on maybe the 9 to 5 isn't what life is about. Maybe there is another way to do things. So starting to see that, but there's uncertainty, fear, maybe a few things going on in the background that are holding them back from starting. What advice would you say to someone who's in that position and they know they want to do it, but they're just not able to do it? What would you say?
Yeah, firstly, the 9 to 5 isn't the way to go. So I can 100% confirm that whatever thoughts you might have about that is true. From someone,
you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. It's confirmed. The 9 to 5 is not the way to go.
And then I'd say something which could give you more confidence is trying to find some kind of mentor or someone who's done it before. So then you've got it into your belief system that this isn't just some fantasy. This works. It works for other people. You can potentially then look at what they've done, use some of their techniques to help you. Like, I get mentored now. I think it's like really important to have someone, rather than having to learn all the steps yourself. You don't have to do that. There's people, no matter what it is you're thinking of doing, someone's probably done it before in some sense. So yeah, I think try and find people to help speed up the process and give you confidence. It would be like a real top tip. It would save a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you say, if you find somebody who's done it before already, rather than trying to figure it out yourself, you're going to save 10 times more time than figuring it out yourself. And as you've already pointed out, time is the most valuable resource. And so I always have this thing in my mind. I think it's crazy to not invest money and spend time instead. Because time is infinitely more valuable than any money you could spend. So definitely find a mentor. Really valuable advice. Any closing thoughts, Violet, that you want to share before we wrap up?
I think I'll go back to that one that I said earlier, which I do think is really important, which is the done is better than perfect. So no matter where you are and what stage you're at, whatever you're doing, try and get it out there, try and test it, even if it's with friends and family, like get a feel for what other people's real opinion is. Because I think sometimes we can get very insular with whatever product or service or whatever it is that we've got, and we're seeing it just from our eyes only. Whereas if you just get it done, get it out there, start getting feedback, you learn so much more from other people than you ever would talking to yourself.
Yeah. Brilliant. Violet, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights, and thank you for sharing your story as well. Because I think for anyone watching who is in the position that we talked about, they're in the 9 to 5, they want to replace their income and they want to create more freedom, more choice and more control in their lives. I think your story has been a perfect example of exactly what it takes and exactly what is possible for somebody who is really committed to making that change. So thank you very much. I appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Bye. Speak to you later.